this video, we will follow the steps in the finishing chapters of your updated 16-point Skinny Robin and Fat Robin Mariner's Compass books. If you have my previous books, much of this info is in the book and some of the info is on my tips tab on my website. Once your raw block is completed, we will first finish its center. By putting the center in first, your block diameter will be set for later finishing into or onto your background. Once the center is in, then I will show you both how to applique your block onto your background or how to sew your block into the background. For these examples, we will be using compass blocks, but these same techniques can be used on any of the other 16-point companion blocks, like compass sunflowers and round sunflowers, or on any of the 32-point blocks as well. So there are many ways to finish the centers of your blocks. I call the centers a creative opportunity. You just have to cover the hole. You can fussy cut something here and use some steam-a-seam to put it on, or you can use a yo-yo, a patch, anything you can think of to cover the hole. For this video, I will show you two more traditional ways to finish these centers, and the first method we'll talk about is reverse applique. First, my instruction books give you more info about sewing and pressing your blocks for reverse applique. When the raw block is finished, you simply put a piece of fabric underneath your block center and then sew around the top. This results in some interesting shapes in the middle of your block. For a compass, you get a square. For a compass sunflower, you will get an octagon, and for a sunflower, you will get a 16-sided shape, which is almost round. Again, more info about sewing for reverse applique centers are in my instruction books. The second method I will show you is for making a round face circle center. All of the center circle sizes for all 16 sizes of blocks can be found on the template sheet that comes with your book and ruler. There is a separate sheet for skinny and fat. You will use this template sheet to make a freezer paper circle for the finished size center circle for your size block. Circle sizes for finishing the centers of your block will be found on the right side of the template sheet, and circle sizes for finishing the outside of your block are on the left. To make this freezer paper template, you will first look to see how big the circle is that you will need. For this example, we will need a center for a 12-inch block. The circles at the top of the template sheet are for compass and compass sunflower blocks, and the circles at the bottom are for sunflower blocks. These template sheets work a bit like my rulers in that the solid line circles are finished sizes and dashed line circles include a 1/4-inch seam allowance. Since we are making a face circle center, we will use the finished size for a 12-inch block. For skinny, that is 2.82 inches. You need a freezer paper square that is a bit larger than this finished size. It doesn't have to be a perfect square. We will fold this freezer paper square into quarters. To get a nice round finished circle, you will want to take some care here to fold the square neatly so all the folds line up. Then you will unfold your square and lay it on top of the template sheet for the finished size circle for your block, lining up the folds on the sides of the quarter circle. Carefully trace around the solid line for your block. Fold the square back up and then cut around your traced line. Make sure the folded edges stay lined up while you are cutting. Take some care here so that you will end up with a nice round circle. The rounder your template, the rounder your finished center will be. Once you have your center circle template, first do a sanity check and place this freezer paper template on your block to make sure that it is the size that you would like. Once you are happy with the size, you will need 2 squares of fabric that are at least 1 inch bigger than your center circle template. These two squares will be sewn together to become our center. You could also use a piece of fabric and a piece of lightweight non-fusible interfacing if you would like. Place the fabric squares right sides together and press the freezer paper template down onto the back side of one of the squares. Next, you will sew completely around this template as close as you can to the edge, but not sewing on the paper. The smaller the circle, the shorter your stitch length should be for a rounder finished circle. I am using a contrasting thread for this demo, but you would want to use matching thread for your center. Remove the freezer paper and carefully trim around the stitching about 1/8 of an inch away. Try to be consistent with your trimming to also help obtain a round finished center. Then pinch the back of the center and make a little slit. Make the slit large enough for turning this circle inside out. Turn the circle inside out and run your finger or tool of your choice around the perimeter of the circle. Then pinch the circle edge between your fingers and gently roll the edges until your circle looks round. Press the back side of the circle by gently pulling the edge slightly back and pressing so that the back facing does not show on the front. Once it is pressed, pin it on your block and stitch it down. You can hand applique, use a straight stitch, or a decorative stitch of your choice. I often use a clear thread and a hem stitch for my applique. Now we are ready to finish these raw blocks into our project. We will finish these two blocks different ways. The skinny robin block we will applique onto our background, and the fat robin block we will sew into our background. First, you will need a background square for each block. I suggest that the background square be at least 3 inches larger than the finished size block. I always add a little extra so that the block can be squared up after being sewn. For this example, I am using 15-inch squares. Let's applique our skinny robin block onto the background. You will need a freezer paper circle that is the finished size of your block. We will make these freezer paper circles using the same method as we did for the center. So we need a 12-inch freezer paper circle for this 12-inch block. You will press this freezer paper circle onto the back of your block. You can use the north, south, east, and west folds of your paper to line up on the opposite points. The freezer paper should be centered on the back with the edge laying on the stitching X's or just slightly beyond. If your stitching X's are beyond the freezer paper, you will likely be cutting off the points. If so, you will need a larger freezer paper circle. Once it is centered, go ahead and press it down. Now we will trim off some of the excess riffraff around the perimeter of the block. Trim in as neat of a circle as possible and leave at least 3/8 inch beyond the freezer paper perimeter. This is so it will be easier to press in the next step and you will be less likely to burn your fingers. Carefully press the outside fabric around the freezer paper circle. Once you are happy with the pressing, remove the freezer paper and pin around the entire perimeter of your block to keep it in place until the next step. Now center your block onto the background square. You can also fold and finger press the background square to get north, south, east and west points to help line up your block. Once centered, go ahead and pin it to the background and sew it down however you would like. Machine or hand applique, straight stitch, decorative stitch, your choice. Trim your block to your desired size and finish it into your project. To sew the fat robin block into our square, we will need 2 freezer paper templates. We will need one that is 1/2 inch larger than our block size. So for a 12-inch block, we need a 12.5 inch freezer paper circle. Then we will also need a freezer paper quarter circle that is 1 inch smaller than this first freezer paper circle. So we will need an 11.5 inch quarter circle. This quarter circle template will be used to cut the circle out of our background square. No matter what size block you are making, you will always cut the hole out of the background exactly 1 inch smaller than the unfinished size of your block. This 1 inch ratio will ensure that your block will finish into the background without any puckers and lay nice and flat. At the ironing board, we will center the 12.5 inch freezer paper circle onto the front side of our block. I like to fold back the freezer paper at the north, south, east, and west points about 1/4 inch. Then I first center the freezer paper north and south points. With the paper folded back 1/4 inch, you should not see any point sticking out. Then make sure the east and west points are centered as well. When you have it centered, go ahead and press it down. I always take a minute here to check that the freezer paper extends 1/4 inch past all my points, so I won't be cutting any of them off when sewing into the background. You can see through the freezer paper, and you can also hold it up to a window to make sure. Once you're happy, go ahead and trim your block flush with the freezer paper. Now we will cut the hole in our background fabric. Fold the background square neatly into quarters. Press the 11.5-inch quarter circle template onto the folded square with the straight edges along the folds. Press the freezer paper down and then carefully cut around the curved edge of the freezer paper. Take this background square and fold it in half again and press it to get another set of reference points for when we go to pin this to our block. Lay your trimmed block right side up and lay the background square on top of your block right side up as well. Figure out which way you want to orient your block. Then we will start pinning the background to the block, starting at the north, south, east, and west points. Place your pin a 1/4 inch away from the background edge and into your block at the point, which should be a 1/4 inch from the raw edge. Just make sure you place your pin at the top of the point. This way, when you start sewing, as long as you are sewing at or above your pins, you won't be cutting off your points. Continue pinning using the extra set of folds for the northeast, southeast, southwest, and northwest points. Finally, match the raw edges and pin the other 8 points. Once pinned, sew your 1/4 inch seam around the entire block. Once sewn, remove the pins and start pressing the background square away from your block. Trim your block to your desired size and finish it into your project.